recording it. Okay,
I think.
so
Okay, you're recording?
yeah.
Okay, so can I chime in really quick on my views on Bernie Sanders socialism?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so as far as I know, he only has one or two like remotely socialist policies. Like he's not for socialized steel. He's not for socialized industry. He's not for socialized education. He's like pro-individualism in a lot of instances. Like the only time he's socialist is in things which are already westernized, like healthcare and some form of like political, not reduction, not constriction either. That's too rigid of a word. Constraint, I guess.
What do you mean? What
Like
do you mean
those
they're
are the
already
only
like westernized?
What I mean by that is, for example, education in Western culture is still seen as a very top-down system in which you have a master who deposits knowledge within students, who this instance are academic slaves. They cannot function without the discretion and approval of the master, the teacher. Regardless of their aptitude for whatever subject, if there is no discretion and acceptance from the master, the slave will never exceed their state, in which they gradually go up and go up and go up until they themselves become a master, depositing knowledge within other slaves, academic slaves. And education is still seen through that lens, and that's a good thing. Whereas other forms of education, much more localized forms of education, typically originating from groups of people no larger than 150, what some might call a village, in which education is a much more communal task. Like, let's say you didn't get one grade from every teacher. All of your teachers collectively gave you a single grade. That's a more localized, holistic, I guess, version of education. That's a socialist paradigm in which every single aspect of education is, in a sense, community-based. Your teachers come from the same communities because every teacher is state-assigned, and they logistically assign you to the place that requires the least effort on their behalf. So less transportation fees, less logistical work. They assign you to where you live. And they don't do that here, and Bernie Sanders doesn't endorse that kind of policy. He endorses westernized policies because westernized policies typically are more adept at functioning within the top-down model.
Time. Zach, response.
Well, you said that the only things he's socialized on are things that are already westernized. That's why I asked you what your definition of westernized was. Um,
Mhm.
he well, see the reason I disagree with Bernie's resume, so to speak, is that I don't like the idea of free education. I don't think that I think the value of degrees is already kind of going down. I just don't see how making college more accessible to everyone is going to fix that sort of uh, I suppose. Well, the thing with healthcare too, I feel like that it should be. I don't know if I'm completely against like a public healthcare system. I do think that there should still remain privatized healthcare for those who want to pay money for it. I'm kind of torn on the whole on healthcare. I'm not sure if I think there should be a publicized system or not. Uh, but the response, basically what I meant though, or before we like started recording, when we were talking about like book burning and stuff, like my point was that like it wasn't that we're okay with the state having the means of production. My point was just kind of
Mhm.
like I think that a lot of the Marxist thought of sort of like the oppressed versus the oppressor, sort of the power going to the lower class over like the upper class. I don't think that's as completely pathologized as it used to be. right? Because I think now a lot of people are aware of like how the 1% has a lot of the money, and there are a lot of people who are vocalizing their how upset they are that that is when there are a lot of people who don't have like a standard of living. And when you see like things like the Panama Papers that got leaked, where you see that there's more than enough money to literally give a standard of living to everyone
Mhm.
in the country, and like people see that and they get upset. But I think there's like a lot of ideological. That's why I think the 21st century is going to be primarily composed of sort of ideological war, like almost meta-political war, where people
Of course.
disagree whether or not, um, like on both sides, there's like there are a lot of moral claims where it's like Eric is a libertarian and he thinks that your property, like taxation that would be required to provide something like a standard of living would be inherently almost immoral, like, whereas other people would argue that it would be immoral to not give people the standard of living even when the money is there. And to me, I am still kind of undecided on it, right? Like I'm at the point where I'm looking at these different ideologies and I'm trying to come to conclusions about what I personally think is right. Um, and I'm sort of impartial, but I don't. My point basically was saying like I don't think that Bernie is a full blown like communist or anything, or even a socialist, because that would imply that the state would have the means of production, right? Which obviously
Yeah.
isn't true. We're still like a capitalistic society. But I don't think the Marxist thought is as pathologized as it used to be, right?
Oh, of course not. I mean, we're not in the age of McCarthyism, at least not like.
We should be, goddammit. We should be. If you support the communists, you
Damn
fucking
Reds.
not be allowed to work anymore.
But like honestly, I like Bernie. However, I just feel that he's falling under the same curse that every person in the public eye falls under eventually, and that's for lack of a better term, like they extremify them. They're either an idol or they're forlorn. Like there's no in between. Like there's no historical accounts of meh people. It's either like extraordinary or infamous. And
I
I
think
feel that that's what's happening to Bernie. They're making him an idol, and that's really bad. Like that's the same reason we have images in American history textbooks of George Washington depicted as a Greek god, where he has no blemishes, like an amazing physique. Like that's absurdity, and I would hate to see that happen to Bernie. Like it happens to so like I'm not knocking their contributions to humanity, but a lot of people who have done great things are no longer seen as people. They're seen as figureheads, and that's really dangerous. Because when you detract from your own responsibility and impart all of your decision-making power on a figurehead, like that's how like the Third Reich happened, and that's how the Khmer Rouge happened, and that's how like numerous like wars and like civil atrocities have happened, and I really don't want that to happen again. Like I may really disagree with Trump supporters, but I don't want them killed by Bernie supporters. And like that's kind of the dichotomy which American politics is taking. Either you're with us or against us. Like even if your struggles are remotely similar to mine, because you have a different perspective, they're completely foreign and alien from anything which I have ever encountered.
It's a division of the
And
party.
Everyone should agree with me and vote for me. Hooked Eric.
and hey, write-ins are a thing. That's why our generation thought it would be funny to write in D's nuts for a candidate.
Yeah,
yeah.
I can remember the
Tragic.
state that polled with that. I think it was like one of the northeastern states that had like D's nuts as like a literal like write-in.
Yep, write-in candidate. Pathetic, personally, my opinion. I
Well,
cannot
I'm voting
believe
for
that.
Mickey Mouse, so I mean, his policies are pretty. I think they're really fair. They're in line with my own personal views.
Oh, that's another thing that I like. Wait, we're going away from the Bernie conversation. I guess my fundamental standing on Bernie's political standings is I like him. I agree with the majority of his policies. However, I feel that the dichotomy which he's creating is pretty detrimental to like any political dialogue whatsoever.
That's not a reason to oppose him. You're saying you agree with his policies, but because he's a
No.
lightning rod.
No, I
you don't
completely
like
agree
him?
with it. No, I like lightning rods. I'm just saying it can be a problem. Like,
How do you? Okay.
Okay, I'm still voting app. I just think the disad matters. I completely
So were you gonna vote for Bernie?
if I was voting, yes.
Are you not voting?
No, the fact that there's an electoral college which can entirely go against the popular vote and has done so in the past makes me question the validity of my importance.
But you would support Bernie if you felt as though your support were meaningful.
Yeah, definitely. Honestly, I am very, very not radical, but Bernie.
You're very insane.
Bernie speaks to something which I believe in, and that's that comfort and conformity can be incredibly dangerous, and those are two things which I feel are rampant within our society.
Who's too comfortable?
The majority of society, for example.
Yeah, but isn't he arguing that majority of society isn't as comfortable as the 1%?
No, everybody's comfortable, including the 99%. What I mean by comfort and conformity is the refusal to acknowledge that our history is not pure. It's not by accident, and it's not.
Refusing to acknowledge that.
The majority of society,
What difference does that make in terms of what policy we ought to undertake?
None.
So why would you support somebody who's taking policies that are, I would argue, are institutionalizing further violence against the average American person?
Okay, I support Bernie. I believe that it's dangerous to idealize him because he has made mistakes.
But that you are so dodging the question. His whole policy is based on the notion that yes, we should tax and spend.
Uh-huh.
So do you approve of that?
As far as I know of his tax policies, they don't seem to be horrible. So yeah, I approve of that.
Okay, they're not outrageously different from the status quo. We can agree on that.
Well, isn't he proposing a flat tax? And don't we have a graduated tax system right now?
Well, he's not proposing a net reduction in tax revenue.
Well, okay, I guess there's a fundamental difference in means, but not a difference in end, I guess. Because
What do you mean?
if we get the same amount of money, there's no difference in the ends. But if we get there via a graduated tax or a flat tax, that's a different means to the same end.
Okay, I agree a flat tax is a preferable means if you accept that either methodology is acceptable, which is not, because fundamentally, even with a flat tax, you're still going to have a redistributionist policy, right?
Well, yeah, I do agree with redistributionist policy.
There's no justification for it.
His tax plan isn't flat, is it?
I don't know, because when I think of government, I don't believe that their role is only to provide a safe haven for shelter and trade. I do believe that government's obligations to citizens exceed the majority of those which we currently have within the United States.
But when you say obligations to citizens, don't you mean their ability to use coercive force to extract funds from citizens?
Well, that's how they get their revenue, but...
Okay, so isn't that a problem?
I don't think so. Because if you're going to live... I guess it's kind of like paying a bouncer at a club. If you're going to live within the sovereign borders of the United States and expect that you're not going to be attacked by whoever's pissed off at us at the time, and at least have somebody who's going to take the bullet before you should probably be willing to pay for that person to take the bullet before you have to take the bullet.
Okay, but do you think that the amount of money and the sort of taxes that the federal government is taking
right now is fair? No. These are the things
so would you like to see that number go down or up?
Depends on... This is how I feel taxes should be spent. I feel that taxes have 3 places they have to go. The first, genuine matters of defense. Second, education. Third, healthcare and basic civic systems.
No. Okay. There are 2 areas that they need to attend to. 3 actually. 1 is environmental regulation.
Okay.
2 is the roads, and 3 infrastructure in general, and 3 is defense. And they certainly don't have any business doing healthcare, or certainly not education. They're killing. They are why education sucks.
But I can understand our current model, but I do believe that a good maybe Finland, a good state education model is not bad. Sad to say, but even places like North Korea that have purely state regimented education are amazing.
But you are assuming that some centralized authority figure can better spend an individual's education dollars than can that individual himself. Why are you assuming that?
I'm assuming that because fundamentally it's much easier to have one person accountable for a shitty decision than it is to have multiple people
But with
accountable for
government,
their shitty
nobody's
decisions.
accountable. With government, nobody's accountable.
With our current system of government.
So why then would we be arguing in favor of funding that current system of government with more tax dollars?
I am not in favor of funding that.
And why wouldn't you be in favor of funding it with as few tax dollars as possible?
Because I don't know how much is as possible is. If I knew the specific number...
I'll tell you this, if I get elected president, I will eliminate Homeland Security right away, and I will cut everybody 1/400 millionth of the check.
That sounds like a lot of money, and that's pretty cool. But I just...
Do you think we need Homeland Security?
I would only be okay with that if I knew that we had something that protected us.
Why? Why would you only be okay with that if you knew we had something to protect you? Are you only okay eating at your home if you know that it's clean?
Yeah, because I don't eat.
So what kind of tests do you do? What kind of tests do you do in your kitchen to make sure there are no germs?
Pretty much wash things and dry things.
Okay, so
with
you engage in
disinfectants.
behaviors that are suggestive that you have a low enough degree of dirtiness that you can eat there, right?
Yes.
Okay, so if that's the case, if you think that the normal behavioral stuff like that is sufficient,
Mm-hmm.
then why wouldn't it be sufficient in so many other realms of life as well that the government currently interacts with? Why would you need, if in fact you can determine on your own, oh, this is safe, why do you think we would need a Homeland Security Department that we never needed prior to 9/11,
Mm-hmm.
and that didn't prevent 9/11,
Mm-hmm.
and that by all accounts hasn't prevented anything since of any meaning? Why would we need this massive bureaucratic organization?
Okay, what I think we need somebody to basically set up a wall for is we as individuals, as a community, don't have the logistical means to do the same things as Homeland Security.
Why wouldn't the individual companies handle it? If Homeland
So
Security
like
wasn't
private
there,
sector...
why wouldn't United Airlines have a vested interest
But Eric,
in making
if you
sure
really
that they have
believe,
security?
I just want to
Wait,
interject. If you really believe,
Right. Okay.
like, I was going to interject it towards Eric. If
Okay.
you really believe these arguments you're saying about like your own kitchen regulation, why do you still feel there needs to be environmental regulation? If I trust,
Because the environmental violations are actual assaults on other people. The pollution of one individual is not sustained within your own backyard. If I decide to burn a huge pile of trash every day in my backyard and put up a huge bunch of smoke and it goes in my neighbor's houses, I am imposing upon them. My actions are exceeding the boundaries of my own self and onto everybody else, okay? So if you take that at a massive scale, you've got companies who are polluting massively, then obviously they're impacting everybody, and somebody needs to manage that. And the only person who can is the person who's got a monopoly on use of force, and that's the government, and that's why they should have to be in charge of
so
environmental
you're saying we
regulations.
can't
That's
ultimately
right.
trust corporations to not do on their own. That's what you're
Wait.
saying. We ultimately can't trust them. So we have to have regulations. So we can't
I'm
ultimately
saying-
trust restaurants to keep their kitchens clean.
I'm saying we can't trust them to not engage in diffuse harms. Okay?
So what gives you what makes you trust like restaurants to do the same thing?
All right. Felix wants to
Okay,
say something.
I have to say something. Okay, specifically in regards to why we need Homeland Security. Just like you said, pollution is not constrained within my own backyard. War, bullets, violence are not constrained within sovereign borders.
You're not understanding the difference between
Like-
diffuse harms and specific harms.
Wait, okay, so, for example, we have several states on the border with Mexico.
Calm to get down.
Those states are experiencing a unique type of violence. And if Mexico continues its current path, I'm pretty sure it will evolve into civil war.
It's because of the legislation. It
No,
is
I know.
because of the government's role.
I know that.
You cannot defend continuing to use abusive force by government because the government currently causes these problems with abusive use of force.
I know. I know that we can't continue the same source of the harm. What I'm saying, like, I've never agreed with the current system for national security. I said that the idea of national security is a good thing because hopefully the only time you would need national security would be if your neighbor had a party that got too ruckus and you need somebody to keep their shit from spilling over onto your lawn.
Right. Well, that's the role of government.
That's exactly what I feel we need, a certain degree of properly applied national
We
security.
need to stay within the bounds of the Constitution, for one thing, which means no standing army.
That-
right?
I'm fine with that.
Okay, so then all of a sudden our need for taxes goes down a whole bunch. What
But-
about the 16th Amendment? Why
but-
did we pass that shit? We didn't need it prior to 1913.
I-
And what about the New Deal? for
I like
Christ's
the
sake?
Constitution, but I have to believe that it's a living thing.
Okay, so look, you're completely arbitrary, whim-based. It's, well, because it's a living thing, it can change. It's saying I'm not going to constrain it with
The
anything.
Constitution doesn't change. Our interpretation of the Constitution changes, and that's the point.
But if that's the reason, if that's the model we should use, then our interpretation is completely arbitrary. Then the Constitution has no constraining power.
Well-
Because you can interpret it to mean anything, as they have interpreted growing pot in your backyard for your own consumption to be interstate commerce.
What I think is necessary for like interpretation of the Constitution is shit like where it says men. Like that should not be interpreted in literally as men. That can easily be amended to they.
I
and
think
them.
it can be amended, and it's
Or
fine.
interpreted
Okay. All right,
as-
but see, I don't like the fact that when you start getting mushy with the rules like that, then you end up with a disaster like we currently have, which is this monster that is not even remotely constrained.
I know, and like shittily, I'm an idealist, and my ideals, like ideally, I would like an anarchy in which everybody's responsible and nobody needs a government to look out for anybody. However,
But we can have something close to that solves our problem, which is to say the government should be responsible for responding to
Okay,
negative
like-
rights violations.
I definitely agree with your two roles of government, like the civic infrastructure, but where I think we disagree on the healthcare portion is I believe hospitals, like, do you agree those are a part of civic infrastructure?
No.
No? Well, because like I feel like that's a part of civic infrastructure, and I feel like where our difference was maybe like build the hospital but put nothing in it, where I'm asking them to build it and put stuff
If
in
we
it.
get rid of the insurance companies, the government entirely from the system, then the free market will provide plenty of healthcare options for everybody at varying degrees of cost. Unfortunately, it's regulating the
in
shit out of
theory,
it.
in theory.
Well, the free market definitely applies to the consumer every single time, but the person that the free market shits on almost every single time is the producer. Like, look at what coffee and bananas have done to the world. Like, there was a fucking war fought over the rights to bananas in, like, the 30s. That's horrible. And it's because of, like, shit like
All
that.
right, stop this video. Let's start a new one. We gotta get. You gotta go. There's
Yeah,
not enough
I-
room in this video for two ENTPs fucking duking it out. That's great, but it's too much.
I like,
Are we ending the conversation then in general, or are we continuing it later? Or?
Well, let's stop this video.
Oh,
Bye,
you leaving?
first Felix. It was great having you on the
Yeah,
show.
see if,
awesome.
talk to you again soon, Felix. Yeah, and Abraham.
Bye, everyone.
Peace.
Rock on, dog. Don't forget to rock and roll. All right. Is Felix taking on or what? All right, cool, great, thank you.
All right, thanks for watching Talking with Famous People.